You know, I remember about 17 years ago, I guess, give or take, there was an older couple who came by looking at our van, looking at a car of ours. And I forget how this conversation came about. I have a basic recollection, I guess, but I can't nail it down specifically. But we started talking, me and this older couple, and I started talking about marriage, about God's statutes for that. I mean, I bet I didn't use that kind of language. I was 10 years old at the time. But I remember I did start talking to him about that. And my dad, in the background, sort of chuckled at that, and he said, yeah, ever since Cody was real young, he had this passion for telling people about marriage and telling people God's statutes of it and everything. We don't know where he got it. But, you know, thinking about it, not only did that fall under the purview of a pastor anyway, but marriage counsel and marriage advisement should always come from a Christian perspective. Because I don't know how many of y'all know this or not. This is a pretty obscure reference in the Bible that I'm going to go over today. But God actually created the first man and the woman. I mean, he created them male and female. He did that. I'll give you a few seconds to get over that. To get over that thought. That I know your mind is just beyond right now. But if you would turn with me to Genesis 2:24, if you would. Again, Genesis 2:24. The background on this. This is it is in scripture. This is immediately after. This is immediately after God created Eve. God gave man, God gave Adam a helper. And this decree is made shortly after. Picking up in verse 24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So we see out the gate, God basically goes, okay, I know I just created this woman a few seconds ago, but from now on, this is how I want it to go. This is how I want you to go about things. Because, and we'll see this in a second, there's different requirements, different expectations, different mission that they're on when two people get married. And it seems like that mission, those duties, those expectations can be carried out in each of the four if they are under the same roof as the people who had the mission and the expectations and the duties previously. So we see right from the get-go, God takes it very seriously. God takes marriage very seriously. Wasting not a lot of time here. Turn with me to Ephesians 5:24 and 25. Again, that's Ephesians 5:24 and 25. I talked about those expectations mission that really can be carried out. It's easy to support if you're under that previous generation. Those people are the mission and the duty previously. Picking up in Ephesians 5:24. Now as the church submit to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Verse 25, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now those are two distinct missions, two distinct parallels almost, but we see in verse 5:24, well, the husband's supposed to be the head of everything, it seems. The husband's supposed to be the head of the household. The husband's supposed to have the final say. Wives, submit to your husbands. Not, and this gets confused a lot. It's not really in a, I don't know how really to explain it, but it's not really in a safe setting. It's not in a demeaning, it's not in a demeaning stature, yes, say. If they're just saying, hey, wife, lean into your husband. He'll take care of you. He's in charge now. I mean, submit. Basically, everything that's one in the household goes through him. But we see the husband is actually charged, I say, with the greater mission, with the greater duty, greater expectation. Pick it up in 5:25. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Okay, if it wasn't clear enough, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. We see, and we think about, well, Christ died for those he loved. Christ died for a church. So a man must be willing to put his life on the line, must be willing to put himself on the line for his wife. So marriage is taken very seriously, even from the get-go, but we see in Ephesians the mission and the duties and expectations of the way that the husband and the wife God has for the husband and wife. We see that God has established marriage thus far. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. You don't have to turn there, I'll just read it, but if you do want to turn there, it's Matthew 5:31 through 32. We see the severe weight that God puts on marriage. He gives three grounds for divorce in this case. Well, yeah, he gives ground for divorce. Matthew 5:31 through 32. Whoever divorces a wife except on ground of porneia, sexual immorality, makes her an adulteress, and whoever married a divorced woman commits adultery. Reason that Christ gives, and this is Jesus Christ himself, reason that Jesus Christ gives for divorce. Okay, and yes, one of you has been sexually immoral. He was speaking to Pharisees and Sadducees. That's why he used the language of the wife. But if either one has been found in sexual immorality, then that's grounds for divorce. That's grounds for termination. But anything less than that, I mean, not only does it have to be worked out, but it will be worked out, and it can be worked out, because it's what God expects. It's the Bible, it's a command from God, so therefore, it's doable. It's not only doable, it's expected. You know, nowadays there's a big emphasis on, and I mean, I agree with it to a certain extent, but there's a big emphasis on love and married for love and feelings and all that. Big emphasis on that. But we're confusing something. We're confusing love as a feeling when it's not. Because feelings change, feelings are malleable, feelings fade over time sometimes. I heard love described in this way at one time. I heard love described, oh, love is an accent. And I really couldn't agree more. Because, I mean, if you think about it, that actually makes the most sense. I mean, the Bible says love one another, but if someone treats you like crap, or someone treats you yes in what God says for you, yes in how God says you should be treated, well, it can be very difficult to love them. It can be very difficult because you feel no love from them. And if you feel no love from them, then you shouldn't be together anymore. Or, I mean, you shouldn't be together in the first place. Not anymore in the first place. God takes marriage very seriously. And as for love, we confuse it with a feeling when it's not. It's more of an accent. But unfortunately, like I say, this should be easy because this is an expectation of God. And if it's an expectation of God, if it's in the Bible, then it's doable, then you can manage it. But unfortunately, we are even in this mortal reality where ever since Adam ate of the fruit of the tree, we have all these mixed up emotions, all of these mixed up feelings that can cloud judgment. Feelings that can turn on a dime. But here's what I say. Here's what I say if you're thinking of divorce, not under the statutes of God or what have you. I would say, okay, what would the person who quotes fell in love for this person in the first place, what would they say to you? I mean, honestly, I keep talking about how God ordained marriage, how God put such a big emphasis on marriage. You don't get married for yourself. You shouldn't. I don't expect, now, as a disclaimer, I don't expect secular people to follow the same statutes. But as for Christians, you don't get married for yourself. You get married for God. You get married to leave a legacy of Christ, a legacy for God. Either a legacy for your kids that your kids will carry on, or a legacy that others will carry on. You get married as a covenant for God, and we see that covenant, well, should not be so easily broken. Unfortunately, it is. It is easily broken, even with some Christians today, because they get mixed up in feeling. They get confused about what's a feeling or what's being accent or what needs to be worked on. They get confused with that. But if it's a statute from God, which we've been seeing marriage is, and a man and a woman have expectations, a man and a woman have duties, not to themselves, but to God. And we see that covenant with God isn't so easily broken. Hey, I get it. I'm not married. I'll probably never. Indeed, I'm not interested right now. I won't say I'll never be married, but indeed, I'm not interested right now. And that's fine. But I get it. It can be hard. There can be trials. There can be tribulations. As with anything. But if God brought you to it, which God brought you to marriage, God, it is from a Christian perspective. God brought you to the marriage. God brought you to quote fall in love with God brought you to fall in love with your significant other. And if God brought you to it, He can bring you through it because God won't abandon you in that. I mean, divorce except for sexual immorality, and which is understandable, but divorce except for sexual immorality isn't acceptable in the eyes of God. So what am I saying? Am I saying Christians who get divorced or think about divorce are gonna stray apart from God? Well, No, not saying that. I'm saying as Christians, you have, especially Christians who are married, you have a responsibility to be an example. To be an example to people on what a godly marriage should look like. If you put God first foremost, everything else falls into place, everything else falls through. Yes, there'll be trials, yes, there'll be tribulations, but God will bring you through it because He brought you to it. And that covenant is so sacred to Him that hey, there'll be none of this. You can get through anything else that life throws at you. The only reason you're even allowed to entertain the thought of divorce is sexual immorality, adultery, basically. Everything else can be taken care of through me. Now it would be hard, yes, but it can be taken care of because I brought you to it and I love you and I won't abandon you to this, even to this. Guys, I love you. God bless you. Consult God in everything because God brought you to everything that is in His Word. Guys, I love you. God bless you. And I'll see you next week.